I've got a submission here from andrenoites, who's building a QAV210. Just looking for some general tips, I guess. Thinking of lowering yaw P to 9.5 and increasing yaw D to 7. I'm not going to have much of a comment about yaw D. I think yaw D is not hugely important. I could be wrong about that. But in general, I think if your black box traces, if your D term looks okay, then yeah, you can raise it as long as it's not flipping out. I think P and the balance of P and I together are most important on yaw. And I wonder whether the I term has actually decreased in importance in later versions of Betaflight, especially the higher update frequency, because it seems like the P term has taken on more importance as the update frequency has increased, and I term has become less de-emphasized, maybe you could increase P pitch. We'll see. I don't know why, but Blackbox Log Viewer didn't want to open your video, so I've got your video open here in a separate window. Let's just take a look here at what's going on. So it certainly looks like you're flying pretty smoothly after your roll. I didn't see any bounce back or anything. I did see a little bit of shudder after your little twitchy stick move here. Let's take a quick look at that. So I can actually see a tiny bit of vibration or oscillation. Not oscillation, that's not the right noise. A little bit of vibration right before you do that move. Might just be wind. Right there. Just before you do the stick move. And then after you, there's a little bit more. There's just a little bit of bounce back after the move. But when you do the roll, there's nothing. I don't see any bounce back there. So, who knows? But overall, the tune looks pretty solid. Nothing to really complain about. You probably know that. So let's take a look at your yaw axis then, since that's what you specifically asked about. Here we are at full throttle, and we see the P term is pretty crazy active. The D term is not super active, and if the D term can, at full throttle, with the P term being this active, if the D term is just sort of, has almost no magnitude, you could probably, I agree, you could probably stand to raise it if you want to. It'll change the feel of the yaw axis very subtly, I think subtly, but in theory it will sharpen it up a little bit. And then the rest of the time, of course, D is just not doing anything. So yeah, raising it up to like 7 or 8 is probably fine. The rest of the time, for P, see here you're getting these oscillations, and you can hear them a little bit in the video as well. So my preference would be to lower the yaw P gain by a fair whack, unless you just seldom are flying with the throttle that high. But you probably, I mean, here where you're at lower throttle, you're fine. But when you raise the throttle a lot, it gets really, yeah, I would think this would be really bad. I wouldn't want this. I wouldn't want that happening. So I would lower the P gain on yaw to the point where this stuff went away at high throttle, assuming everything else was fine. So there you go on that. And then also, let's look at, yeah, you're at, what are you at now? You're at P of 10. 9.5, you sure? Maybe even 9.0. Maybe. As for pitch, can you raise P on pitch? Well, again, here we are at full throttle, and we definitely see some activity on the P term here, right? These sort of bouncy hills. The rest of the time, though, it's active. Here you are at low throttle, and we definitely see some sort of surging of the P term. Relatively, it's not nothing. I wouldn't say it's like large magnitude, but it's not nothing. Again, here we are at mid-high throttle. And we see some spiking here in the, we're going to high throttle now. Find some mid-high throttle stuff. Yeah, yeah, you could raise it, but I feel like you're at the edge of, yeah, and then here at very high throttle, maybe, I feel like you're at the edge of where I would put the pitch axis in terms of P and D. I would have to fly it. Ultimately, I mean, looking at, you can only tell so much by looking at the traces, right? Here we are at high throttle. That's pretty active, but given that you're at high throttle, I don't think it's like bad. I'm not sure I would knock it down, because how often are you really at like 100% throttle? And if the answer to that question is a lot, then maybe knock P down or maybe D down just a bit to smooth the motors out a little bit at the very, very high throttle. But I probably wouldn't raise it. But I have a lower tolerance for rough motors and like things to be a little smoother. And on the other hand, if you raise it and it feels better and flies better, then keep it. But I think you're on the edge just looking at the traces of where I would not tune pitch any higher in terms of P and D. Just because we see this, it's getting really active at the high throttle scenarios. Here, these high frequency spikes is what I'm referring to, both in the P and the D. The P and the D look proportional. The D term is roughly following the P term, right? We don't see a lot of high frequency noise in the D term that is not reflected in the P term. And we don't see the D term having much larger magnitude than the P term. So I feel like your P and your D are like relative to each other, they're about right. So you're close to where you need to be, and I wouldn't make too many big changes here just based on the traces. All right, anyway, well, hope that's helpful. Happy flying.